a state of mind. When you're with family, you feel the aloha. When you're with friends, you feel the aloha. When you're on the beach, the sun's your aloha. That little breeze, the kiss of aloha. Aloha is a state of mind. 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 A state of mind. A state of mind. A state of mind.
Aloha! State of Mind Podcast. And I believe we are live. Welcome to the Aloha State of Mind Podcast. It is Tuesday night, a little bit late, a little technical difficulties. As you can see, something's different here.
Right? Well, there's one big difference is that I'm not sitting next to you.
And that's the main thing. Excuse me, I got like some kind of gum in my mouth right now. But it is Tuesday night, nonetheless. It is July 21st, 2020. Hopefully you guys are having a great Tuesday evening. My name is Mark Easy, if you didn't know.
I'm DJ Free.
Yeah, it's the Lost State of Mind Podcast on YouTube, Facebook, and whatever doesn't kick us off. But yeah, I'm actually in San Diego, where I'm usually at. Poolside at my house.
Right.
And Free is actually back in
Las Vegas.
You finally got back after about, 3 months?
Dude, I'm not kidding. I think it felt like California, the state of California, was like this entity that was just wouldn't let me leave, dude. Like just grabbing me by the ankle and dragging me back. Like every time I try to do something to get out of the state, something would happen. Either a car would get totaled, I'll buy a lemon that the engine block cracked in the middle of the, like an hour into me getting out of San Diego. My other engine, I mean, everything that you can think of that could have gone wrong did go wrong.
Yeah.
But I was so different the last time. I was like, I gotta get home, dude.
I just know the whole story, so I don't wanna. That's for another time, so we'll just leave it as that.
Dude, it was horrific. My journey is crazy, and it's not over yet. So, but oh well. I'm back home now.
Yep, that's a good thing. We gotta say what's up to people coming into the room right now. Joel from Vegas, actually, and also Monroe listening in. I just getting the chat pulled up right now as we speak. So,
okay. Monroe, he's from Hilo. He's getting married pretty soon, so he just did a cake topper. Congratulations! It looks great, man.
yeah.
But also we gotta say what's up to Mitch, one of my old friends from Central YMCA when we used to take care of kids together, like for the summer fun program. We gotta say happy birthday going out to him. He's not gonna be here, but normally he's in the chat room doing it up with us. So happy birthday!
Yeah, definitely happy birthday to Mitch. He's always what they call lurking somewhere. That's a Twitch term I learned. It's called lurking. Like when you just kind of hang out and watch and you don't really participate in the chat, you're lurking. You're a lurker.
I'm a lurker on TikTok. Like like that thing on TikTok where you gotta do dances and jump out of the pool and all that. Yeah, I don't do none of that. I just watch other people do it.
Yeah, I think you gotta be like under the age of like 16 to be on TikTok. I don't know. I don't think they allow anybody older.
Like I try to keep up with everything because I don't want to be the guy like. Remember Monica Lewinsky? What is that about? Like I don't want to be that guy. So
Right.
I try to stay up on the lingo a little bit. I try to make sure that even though I'm 45, at least I know what's going on, so I can connect with the youth a little bit. But
Right.
still, there's only certain amount of that you can do before you become like that. Oh, dude, that old dude's still hanging around.
You're already at uncle status, so you know what I mean.
Uncle status, dude.
Well,
Grandpa
I gotta.
status. I'm
Yeah,
done.
it's done. Well, I don't think you can. We didn't put up the chat for this one, but I see Nicole Williams. She said Chris and I are here. So,
Oh, hi.
because that's on your Facebook, so I don't think it's populating in your.
Chris and I used to Chris used to be one of my really good friends back in the days. He and I used to play guitar together in school. We had the long hair, the jean jackets, rolled up our sleeves.
Right.
Him and I we used to be rockheads, man. And then he joined the Air Force, and I went, to art and all that kind of stuff. Two totally different paths, but I still love the guy, dude. He was always a great guy. He used to make me laugh like crazy. So.
Yeah. And then Jennifer is also tuned in. Jennifer George says, we used to lurk in MSN chat. Man, MSN chat? Jeez.
Wow.
I don't even remember that. I remember AOL, which is probably older, but MSN? I don't know. I don't know if I remember MSN. I don't know if I was hip to that.
We got Don K. Wong working online, right? Yeah, dude, I finally made it out back to Vegas with my and everything. Again, the drama still hasn't subsided, but it's getting there. So.
Yeah. You're almost in the clear, so that'll be for another podcast. But well, let's get right into it, because tonight is a very special night because we have a very special guest, and since you know him, I'll let you do the introduction.
Right, now a couple of years ago when I first started getting into comic books and in general in the industry, I left Hawaii, and I was like, man, the reason why I left Hawaii is because the market was still small back then when I first started about 10 years ago, like maybe 7 or 8 years ago. But the industry in Hawaii has grown exponentially, not only from other realms and Gecko Books and all those guys in Oahu, but it expanded to the outer islands, which had Mike Sato and Enjoy Comics in Hilo. Our next guest, he's one of the pioneers of bringing comics to Maui, which I don't know why he's never really thought about it on a bigger scale, because that's where all the celebrities go to have fun, to jump in the pools, to go down to the beaches. Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, everybody you can think of. And he opened up a comic shop in Maui called Maui Comics. Please welcome to the State of My podcast, Alika Seki. Yay!
Yeah, all right, there we go. We got you on now.
Guys.
What you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm sorting through a collection I just got right now. I thought I had so much work to do, and then this guy was like, "You want to buy some comics?" And I'm like, "It's like a drug addict. You like asking a drug addict if they want drugs. You're like, yes."
Yes. Like what kind of comics? I don't know, 1980s and like the 1935. Of course you're gonna say yes.
Yeah.
Right.
This is all a bunch of Spider-Mans. Not particularly nice shape, but still fun stuff.
Right on, man. See, look at that. This guy has so much passion for the comic industry that even now, even in an interview, he's over there looking and rebagging comics and everything. That's hilarious.
Sorry, man. I'm true to character.
So, I know, Mark has a few questions that he normally puts out in front of everybody, but I just want to give a little history of what you've done for the industry in Hawaii, comic book wise. When you opened up Maui Comics, did you think that it was going to be a hot spot for a lot of local creators and pretty much international creators that come by your place?
That was really a big, very nice surprise how supportive the community was, and how many artists and creators on the larger scale and on the local scale kind of gravitated towards it. That was amazing to me. That gave me the heart. I did it before I started the store. There wasn't a store on Maui for 10 years. People were telling me it's not possible. All the stores that on Maui, the last one closed in 2005, which was the strongest store, was Complete Comics. Everybody remembers Perry.
up by Stillwell's, that,
Yeah.
and he closed in 05. And then after that, people were like, well, if Perry couldn't do it, and Perry is like a legend on Maui. If you grew up on Maui and you read comics, you bought your comics from Perry. And he had the longest and strongest store. And after that closed down, people were just like, it's not happening on Maui. It can never happen on Maui. And but I just knew from experience, I know from my friends, I know the community, that there's so many collectors and so many people who love comics that we needed a comic store. It might not have been like a big money maker, but the community needs it. There's a lot of people who love that kind of stuff. But the artists and the creators like Rob Liefeld and Jim Lee and like all the celebrities and stuff that came by, that blew my mind. That was very unexpected for me.
Well, they were probably just like walking around, and all of a sudden they're like, "There's a comic place in Maui."
That's what makes me really trip, is because these guys are like, you can tell the real guys from the. I listen to a podcast called Cartoonist Kayfabe by Ed Piskor and Jim Rugg. They have a term for artists who are simply in it for a paycheck. It's just a job. They call them jobbers. It's a wrestling term. You guys are familiar with wrestling terms, yeah? They call them jobbers. So you can tell the jobbers from the real comic, fans, the guys who are creating because they love it, because they, no matter where they go, it's like an addict with drugs, a comic book fan with comics, they can't stay away. And Rob Liefeld, knowing that he would get like attacked by all the nerds, he still goes into a comic store because he wants comics,
Right.
Like that
what they do, and what their comic shop looks like. So
yeah, Rob is such a controversial guy, so everybody wants to, talk their crap about him. They're like, oh, his feet, oh, Captain America's chest and Heroes Reborn and all that. But in reality, this dude is like, he loves comics, and meeting him just made me appreciate him that much more.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a few times I met him over the years, and I met him and his kids and his wife. They're really nice, real down to earth. Even though, they're California kids, and they got that California look. They're
the Cali
cool.
style. They're from Cali when you see them,
right? Like they're from Cali.
Yeah.
So
straight out of a Bugle Boy.
Mark is gonna take over with the questions about like your background and all that. So
Sure.
Before that, I guess we can start with, how you grew up and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
Oh, I was just waiting. No, we like to know a little bit of history of our guests, like if you actually grew up in Hawaii, what part of Hawaii you grew up? Was it in Maui? How was your childhood and your high school days? And just kind of get a brief history into the mind of our guests.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting because when you're local, people always ask you where you went to high school. That's
right.
One thing about me is I went to high school in Boston. I'm one of 6 brothers, and I'm the only one who went there. My parents separated, and I guess starting early back, my parents met in the Air Force in California, and I was actually born in Vandenberg Air Force Base before we moved back to Maui, and then my younger brother was born on Maui, and we kind of grew up there until they separated in '87. So the first 6 years of my life, I was on Maui. And then from '87 to '92, when my parents split, I lived in the Boston area. I went over there with my mom's side of the family's from there. And then in '92, I started coming back and living with my family. And my brother, my younger brother, got in some trouble with the law very early on in Boston. And he got an ultimatum. And he was into all kinds of rugged stuff. The kind you couldn't believe, like he's in elementary school slinging dope. It was crazy stuff. And I'm like the opposite of him. I'm like a very nerdy guy, very focused. We both came from rugged backgrounds. Our house in Boston was practically, it was not a good environment for kids. I set my mind to putting myself through college. I did that. I went to a tech school in Boston, and kids from tech schools aren't supposed to go to college. They're supposed to just go into their trade. My trade was drafting. So I worked in an engineering firm. And talking with the engineers, I was like, I think I could do what you guys do. I was working as a drafts person, which was cool because drafting has like a lettering component, which is kind of comics related. I had always wanted to be in comics and art and stuff like that. But because my family was kind of poor, there was a little pressure on me to do something that was financially feasible, like be an engineer. And so my whole life, I've just kind of done this dance with art and creativity, and it's stuff that I would love to be into, but my financial situation in my life, even to this day, has not allowed me to stray too far from what I'm good at, like math and engineering and drafting and things like that, and technical things, which is what I make most of my money from. And that's kind of what gave me the freedom to open the store, was because I was doing well with engineering and things like that. So I also, not only did I go to high school in Boston, but I went to college in Boston, to UMass Amherst. Out of all of my brothers who grew up in Hawaii, I kind of, on one side, when I come back to Maui and stuff, and people punk me because I come Hawaiified from living in Boston and stuff or whatever. On the other hand, I feel very fortunate because the Boston school system is like the #1 in the country. That's where Harvard and MIT and everything is. And I went to a state school, and even going to UMass Amherst, I still got an education that made me so competitive on the local job scene that I was never not able to be hired here. So I tell everybody that I talk to in Hawaii, I'm like, if you guys are considering college, go to the mainland and get a competitive education. Not to say that UH isn't a good education, but they're limited in what they're good at. You know, it's like, unless you're becoming a lawyer or an astronomer or physicist or something, you might want to explore other schools. And not only that, it makes you so competitive when you come back that nobody, you know, if I'm up for a job, I have never not gotten it. And that's one thing that with my brothers who didn't attend college, although my youngest brother, who's 10 years younger than me, I was old enough to like kind of mentor him as he was growing up. And I convinced him to go to college. He went to UH. Good for him. But he wanted to be an astrophysicist. So it kind of made sense. They had you know, connections with observatories and stuff. But then when he realized how many degrees you needed to be an astrophysicist, he cut it short at physicist. He got a physics degree, and now he's teaching at Maui High. So,
well, that's a great story, man. Like just the fact that you actually encourage other people to get off the island. If you want to get a good education that's competitive, I'm sorry, but there's a big world out there. You might as well take advantage of it.
I think Maui especially, and I you know, I'm not too much of an expert on any other islands, but just knowing Maui so well, there's so much talent here, and there's so many intelligent people here. Not so much resources for developing that intelligence or developing that talent. And it's not that hard. Like if we had people who were, you know, could share their skills. Like the high school I went to in Boston was a tech high school. 1 week we would do regular classes, and then the next week we would just do drafting or whatever shop you were in, like auto body or like a tech school would go a long way to create a very strong job force. Or if we maybe expanded the curriculum for the local college, like me as an engineer, the kind of classes I would have to take to sharpen my skills, they don't even offer them anywhere on island. And I would have to either take it at UH on Oahu or do some kind of distance learning, which is very inconvenient. I feel like we could do that here on Maui, and kind of, especially with this whole COVID thing, everybody's kind of like realizing that once tourism's gone, we don't really have much of a crutch, you know, as like the community's helping each other out and stuff. But at the same time, we need to be self-sufficient, and we could do that through tech and through you know, higher industries, maybe like even animation. Imagine if we had an animation studio. God damn.
Like seriously, I mean, a lot of the guys from Pixar, I mean, they still to this day uses like Aloha shops when they go to work. You know, they love that whole thing. But yeah, they were, in fact, I forgot who it was. I was talking to somebody that worked at a Disney animation studio, Filipino guy, like, you know, just randomly at San Diego Comic-Con. And they're like, yeah, we're actually thinking about opening up a studio in Hawaii, like on Kauai or the Big Island, because we have projects that we can use, and with the internet the way it is, all the information's out there, so you know, it's easier to communicate. But yeah, they're thinking about it, but I don't know what happened. That was like 3 years ago. But
yeah, I mean, the county at one point, the county of Maui was willing to invest enough into the tech sector, that we got an entire tech park in Kihei out of it. The High Computing Center, NASA uses that thing, you know, so we know it's possible. And you know what else is funny is that there's so many people in the animation industry that have Hawaii ties or that have ties to people in Hawaii, or they would definitely not mind working here and living here. I know the cost of living is insane, but it, they're, these are high paying jobs. They're, creating Hollywood features, and they could potentially make it work.
I mean, I'm looking at like the cost of living in Hawaii is almost the same as California, and that's what the studios are based off mostly. So
yeah, and that's what is like people complain about the cost of living in Hawaii, which it's crazy. Okay, like the groceries, especially some of that stuff, you can that'll become viral. You just send someone how much your milk costs is viral. But it's like when I was living in Boston, other things aside from groceries and food and stuff like that, like the cost of rent and things like that were pretty close. I mean, it wasn't too far off. And I would much rather live in Maui than Boston.
So how long were you living in Boston?
So all of my high school and college, I was living in Boston. And then, I was just living back and forth kind of. I would come live in Hawaii so this is after 92, but before 2004, I would go live in Hawaii for like 3 to 4 months with my dad during the summer months. And I would leave school early or start school late, and I would just try to maximize my time here. And then for my schooling, I would be in Boston, living with my mom. But that was like a kind of, both sides, it was hard being in Boston because people heard you were from Hawaii and they automatically thought you had it good. Like they were like, well, I never been to Hawaii, so this guy must have some money. And people in Boston have money, man. This is like a place of privilege. It's difficult for people to understand what it is to not have privilege. And so when they wouldn't understand how my living situation in Hawaii could be just as bad as what it was in Boston, so even if people knew how bad my living situation in Boston was, they would assume that my living situation in Maui was any better. But if you're local, you know that when times is hard, times is hard.
Right.
So, like, after you finished college, did you always knew that you would move back to Maui, or was there some kind of question?
It wasn't a question for me. It was like I just had such a connection in so much of my life and my, the things that just being here and it never really was a question. I loved Boston. I loved the experience of getting out there. It's a very cultured city. Like there's a lot to explore and be a part of, and I'm glad I got to do that. But at the same time, I mean, Maui is home. That's,
Right, for sure. So, after you graduated, you moved straight back, and you got a job with what you majored in, or?
Yeah. I was doing engineering, civil engineering, which I still do to this day. And I'm very fortunate because I'm glad that I had the motivation and the intelligence when I was young to put the energy into it, because I have tons of friends who didn't go to college, who went to jail, who were just living their best life and having whatever fun they thought was fun. And, and I didn't feel that cool at the time. And I'm like, I'm missing out on what all these guys are doing. But then I look at how blessed I am. What I do in engineering is recession proof. When the downturn happened in 2008, I lost my job before the recession even hit, and the recession hit while I was unemployed. But there's so much demand for the kind of work that I do that I was able to get a job during the 2008 downturn, which is insane. And even this COVID crisis, I haven't stopped working a day since it started. I work from home. I work in my home office, so nothing's really changed about how busy I am doing engineering work. I kind of have to work to keep the store afloat without having it. My store's still not open right now. I just don't feel safe sending the guys back to deal with the public yet. But so I have to make comic sales on the side to kind of float the store, because our bills don't stop even though the store stopped.
Right. That's kind of like a crazy time to be a small business owner with everything that's going on, and it's just kind of a rough situation. I seriously give a lot of props to all the small business owners right now, because
it's easy to judge when a small business closed down and everybody wants to armchair quarterback it and be like, well, it's because of this, or it's because of that, or, this guy should have known that, or if he did this, it wouldn't have happened. And even during this COVID, it's hard to get, a lot of sympathy for businesses closing. People are like, well, it's going to happen. So they're kind of like have this cavalier attitude towards, just it's going to happen. So we just got to watch all these businesses close. But some of these guys are like superhero strength, just propping up their business, doing what they can to hold it up. And at the same time, a lot of people are, giving charitably to the community, even though it's like at their own peril, like they're losing money. Their business isn't doing that great, obviously. But some of these food businesses on Maui, Maui Fresh Streetery is probably the first one that comes to mind. They give so much in the community. They've been doing kupuna meals every week and sending out meals to people. And a lot of that stuff isn't covered by any of these business loans that's coming from the government. They're paying out of their own pocket, because that's why Maui is home, because everybody here takes care of each other. It's that feeling that people get like when, guys are from Oahu and they come over to Maui, and you're like, damn, man, this is how Oahu was back like 30 years ago. And like, oh God, they're like, I miss this, man. I got to start coming over here more often. Or, I have friends who originally from Oahu who live here now, and they're like, it's just the vibe here. People just take care of each other.
Yeah, it seems more Hawaii to me. I lived there, I think, from 2004 to 2009, and like it's like a perfect balance. I tell anybody who comes to Hawaii, like, if you want to experience Hawaii, don't go to Oahu. That's just like any other major big city. There's gonna be traffic. There's gonna be like crime. There's gonna be a lot of BS. And if you want to really get away, go to some place like the Big Island or Kauai. But if you need a little bit of town and you need a little bit of country, then Maui's perfect, because you got enough of town, but not to be a big city. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Maui's like a good mix. I totally agree on that point.
Because you still got the mall, you still got a Walmart, you still got like a Lahaina.
Like the shopping area is a whole nother.
Yeah.
There's places to eat over here, so.
Yeah, definitely. It's a perfect blend. Like when I lived there, I was like, dang. But I don't know, some reason I had to explore out and move out and just see. I guess maybe when you went to college, you had enough and be like, okay, I'm back. I'm going back.
I was lucky to get it out of my system and do it young, and
yeah,
I'm glad to have that experience. I recently took a trip for a couple of days to Boston. I brought my sons just to show them, like, my dream. I'm nowhere financially in a place to do it right now, but my dream is to let my children also go to school in Boston, maybe, because the schools, going to a good school system really benefits people. I'm not like trying to harsh on the Hawaii school system or anything, but it's hard when you have limited resources for what you're doing and stuff like that. My brother's a teacher now, so he does his best to contribute but I don't think the schools have the resources they need to excel, to help the students excel. I think the students have a lot more potential than is being put to use.
Right, for sure. So let's segue into, since we know you grew up in Hawaii, went to high school in Boston, college, and then moved back. So how did you transition, or actually, were you always into comics and collectibles, or is it something like a thing you acquired over the years?
So, were you guys on Maui at any point, living on Maui?
Yeah, I was in 2004, 2009, I think.
In the 90s, when the comic boom was happening, there was comic stores everywhere. There was like 5 or 6 comic stores. There was like, you could go to different places. I would make my dad every weekend take me to every store that sold comics, and we'd do like the island tour to just like, scope them out and stuff. And my dad was a collector. He does like locals. They do glass bottles. They do, back in the day, my dad did coins and stamps and sports cards. My uncles, one of my uncles owned a sports card store, because there were like 5 or 6 comic stores. There were probably twice as many card stores on Maui at that point. And my uncle owned a card store in the Wailuku Industrial. And so they only cared about the sports cards. So when he would get like a Marvel card box, like the Marvel Universe series boxes, he'd just give me a whole box and not even care. And so like, that's kind of like, I would read those cards, and I would like just nerd out on the Marvel Universe and like learn all the stats, how they had the stats and the little, little blurb. And so those cards were like my intro, man. My uncles would give me that. And then my other uncle, Lloyd and Dougie, who my dad used to dive with a lot, they gave me my first actual Marvel comics when I was about maybe 11 or so. And I fell in love with them. I remember I have two of them out of the three. One of them just turned into like shreds, but the other two I still have. It was Wolverine 71, which that's destroyed. It was X Factor 71, which was the first new team with Larry Stroman, with Guido on the cover, and then Excalibur 72, which was, I think it was a Sam Keith art. It was like Wolverine and everybody in chains and Nightcrawler standing over them, which like those 3 issues, I was just addicted. I would sleep with them under my pillow. I would bring them with me everywhere, like roll them in my pocket. Like those. So my uncles are the ones who are responsible for kind of fostering that was my intro to Marvel comics. With, before that, I was a pretty literate kid. Like I'm nerdy, so I would always read Garfield comics. Was like when I was like, 5 or 6 or, real small. I tried to read a lot of comics, were my favorite thing to read. Mad Magazine, Crack Magazine. But that was all before the Marvel comics. And then the Marvel comics turned me into like an actual comic person. But then, but I think everybody who's our age kind of ditched comics a little bit in the 2000s when they kind of started to suck a little more. Everybody has this phase where they kind of bailed on it. And so that coincides with my college career. Kind of, I at the beginning of college, I kind of had just one long box of comics left. I closed it up and didn't look at it until after I graduated college. And then when I was back on Maui, and that kind of leads into how I became actually a participator in the comic industry. Because back then I was just a collector. I met somebody named Bruce Ellsworth III. He's an Overstreet Price Guide advisor. He's a well-known collector in the industry. He discovered some pedigree collections. So he was actually the first person in history to sell a comic for over 5 figures. He was on CNN in 1984 for it. But me and him, I met him. He was very old by the time I met him. He was missing a leg he had got it amputated from diabetes. He had a lot of health problems. He was actually nearing the end of his life, and he kind of knew it just due to all his health problems. But me and him just got along so well. He had moved to Hawaii, and he's such a big-hearted person. You know how sometimes there's like some anti-Haole sentiments, and you can't move past it. And it's, to an extent, it's good to be protective of where you're from and care about your culture and protect that. But at the same time, it's like you don't want to just be arbitrarily racist and, had a big heart. But because he was white, he's a white guy, and he moved here, and he was unapologetically white. He wasn't trying to phony use Hawaiian words all the time and try to pretend like you know how people move here and they try to co-opt and they like try to blend in, and it's a misguided attempt, but Bruce was none of that. He was just like straight up Bruce Ellsworth. And so I met him. I fell in love with the guy. I thought he was great. And he, I helped him out a lot because I was able-bodied. I was able to write his Overstreet Price Guide reports for him, because I was pretty literate. I would ghostwrite his reports for him. And so, the other thing is, because I was local, people who would have collections would be more willing to sell them if I was there. That's why Bruce was bringing me with him, because they didn't want to deal with the old Holly guy, but they would deal with me. You know what I mean? And so Bruce was like, "Oh man, this is great. I love you, man. You gotta come with me. These guys are selling me stuff now." And so he really educated me. He gave me like a crash course in what the basics of comics history, basically, and grading and appraising and retailing, and everything I know about the industry started with him. And he appreciated the fact I'm so studious and nerdy. I like to read, I like to study. So I took to the material. I became pretty comfortable with it. And he recommended me to become a guide for the Overstreet Price Guide. And so him being an OG, I was like his protege. So they kind of just let me fill his slot. And he ended up passing away. I became an advisor in 2012 and he passed away in 2013. Unfortunately. So he passed away. And so the other funny story about Bruce is he was a big part of what, the comics and stuff was. And, Bruce, I met Bruce in 2010. We were just hung out for like 3 years, but it felt like a long time. The connections I made, all my cousin guys and my Hanai family from Hana, I would introduce them. And, they confirmed what I knew is like, some people, when people move here and they tell each other, well, if the island likes you, then it'll keep you. And if it doesn't like you, it'll reject you, and that's what people move here, tell themselves about Hawaii if they're not originally from here or whatever, which I mean, to an extent is true. Or you can just change your attitude and people won't be so mean to you. But it's like, but if you're dead set on being the kind of person that everybody in Hawaii is going to reject, then, good luck to you. But the thing is, like, I introduced him to all my family and stuff, and they love Bruce too. He's just a big-hearted, big, loving guy, man. So giving, and he loved comics. He wasn't about ripping people off and making money. When I was in the 90s, man, that was everybody in comics. I was a little kid. I would have valuable comics. These guys wouldn't even flinch about like lying to me about what I had, ripping me off, trading me for lower value crap. And so I had a very dim view of retailers after the 90s. I was like, screw this. Everybody's a snake. Everybody is, just trying to rip me off. And I'm just trying to read comics and love them, And so meeting Bruce, I realized, and it reignited my love, is because you can be an expert and not be a dick. You can, it's like somehow possible. Like every other expert I had met before then was a total dick. And they used their knowledge to take advantage of people and rip them off. And I'm just like, how evil, man. It's like, but it was so common that it was just like the way it was. There weren't any like nice retailers. There weren't any, friendly guys who were trying to educate you about grading or value. They were just like, give me your comics. I want to sell them for more money. That's it, So it's like meeting Bruce, that reinvigorated my love for comics. And I was like, I could be that kind of retailer. I could, if I'm buying a collection, like I just bought this collection today, it takes a little longer. I don't just throw $1 at the guy when he shows up and shows me his comics and then he doesn't know if he's getting ripped off or not. I will flip through the collection and I will grade each comic and I'll tell them what the key issues are and what they retail for. And I will, I'll treat them like a peer and I'll treat them with respect. I'll treat them like this is Maui and I'm going to have to look at them in the next couple of days because, it's true.
We have to.
How could anybody rip anybody off on an island, So it's like, yeah. And so Bruce had a huge impact on how I deal with and interact with comics. It's purely out of a place of love, It's never trying to, because I have a job that makes money. I have financial security elsewhere. My comics is purely for love. That's the only reason I do it.
No.
Man, that's an amazing story.
I know. I'm just sitting back and just being like, wow. Yeah, it's great that you can do something, like you said, like some people just use that as a job, like you said, quote, jobbers or whatever it is. People just want to, flip them for money. But when you have the passion for something, I think it shines through and people know, So I think that could be, especially in Maui, like, oh boy, people can see right through you.
People in Maui especially are like very attuned to people being genuine or sincere.
Right.
Like if you're not that kind of person, Maui just would reject you one speed.
Right. that's a kind of interesting story.
But another funny story about my upbringing. I don't know if you guys know this, but my dad, in the 90s ran. Are you guys familiar with Lower Main Street in Wailuku?
Yeah.
It's like the seedy underbelly of Wailuku town.
Right,
it's this one street where all the Korean bars and all the and you know what a Korean bar is, right? It's like they buy the girl drinky and they come back drinky. So it's where all the Korean bars are. And my dad owned a porn store called Action Video, action spelled with 3 X's. And so I just trying to explain like a part of my personality. So it makes me make a little more sense. People don't think I'm so weird, but it's like I was essentially raised in a porn store. Like me and my brother, when my dad would watch us, he would just like throw us in the closet and we would just be like looking at the walls of the pornos and like laughing.
It's funny that you brought that up because I was looking up online and like the pictures you had, and it says that I think it's like Seki like metal or Seki Ironworks or something.
Seki Machine Works, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. It's so weird that you like he went from iron rods, and iron rods. But well, that's awesome.
On that, the Seki Machine Works, that was actually founded by my grandfather, my dad's dad, Yoniichi, and his brother. My grandfather Yoniichi was the youngest of 9, and his brother Tomoichi was the oldest. So him and his brother, after World War II broke out, the bombing of Pearl Harbor, my grandfather was actually a Japanese English language teacher in H. Foko back in the day. But they banned during World War II, they banned the teaching of Japanese language. So he actually had to go and learn a new trade. And so my grandfather and his brother went and learned machining, and they opened the Seki Machine Works. And actually, the Seki Machine Works was opened the same year as statehood was achieved in 1959, also the same year that my dad was born. So, but my dad, when he was young, he worked at the machine works, but he got an injury after I was born. So he ended up having to sell his half of the machine works that my grandfather had founded, and he sold it to my cousin, or actually his cousin, my uncle at the time. And so that side of the family became the 100% owners of the Seki Machine Works. My cousin Tom is the owner right now, and he's over there running it, and our good family friend Bert and everybody. So the Seki Machine Works is still open, but my dad, once he left the Seki Machine Works, he was over at the video store selling Suk Suk videos.
I think he actually made out. I think he went into a better industry. You need machining, but believe me, sex has been the biggest seller since the beginning of time. But
yeah, this is pre-internet era, so porn stores still kind of made sense.
Right?
Yeah, they probably made money hand over fist, pun intended.
Oh. Ever since Goodwill Hunting came out, when you mentioned Boston, you probably get a lot of. Oh, are you a Southie? Like all that stuff.
I mean, having lived in Boston, I knew people from those areas. So like it's pretty interesting, all that stuff that yeah, it's nuts, man. Like I think there was some pretty good accurate depictions in that movie.
Well, I know that. Well, of course, Matt and Ben, they live there, so they basically just wrote a story about their life, and then they put it in Harvard and all that and into it. But and MIT. See, I thought they went to Harvard. I thought they went to Harvard to study. They actually went to MIT to study in that movie.
If you're talking about Boston, though, it's kind of like splitting hairs because a lot of those campuses share facilities. So, like, if you go to Harvard, you're using the MIT campus and vice versa. Like,
You're literally right next door, maybe a mile or two away from each other, kind of thing.
Yeah, and when these colleges are in the city, there's no like clear campus boundary. A lot of the stuff happens throughout the city.
Mm-hmm. So, man. So right now your store isn't physically open, but are you doing online sales or?
Yeah, like I'll higher value stuff and sell it on eBay. That kind of helps me get like a good chunk of change to pay the bills. And then my regulars and my subscribers, I've been servicing them through like, just staying in touch and doing pickups for their subscriptions and stuff. So that's another good solid regular income. I've been stepping back the ordering, obviously, because people can't come in and browse. But I have to give a shout out because I don't know if you guys know, but we've moved a lot. My store's moved a lot. It's hard to rent is a big challenge for comic stores, and so you know, we moved out of the mall. We were in the mall last year, which we love that location, but the building was kind of not in the best shape, and so it wasn't really a good deal. While the sales were up there, we didn't have AC for 7 out of the 11 months, and so people wouldn't hang out in a store and spend money. You know, we weren't making the sales we should have, so we had to move, and now we're in Request Music. If you guys are familiar on Market Street, it's like this old school record store. They sell vinyl and tapes and CDs, and it's like a time machine, which basically is what a comic store is too. Like hard media in any form is like dinosaur stuff now, you know?
Yeah, I used to frequent Request Music right at the corner.
yeah. And everybody remembers the original owner, and it was like a head shop, and they would like, you know, it was pretty like you know, hole in the wall, you know, grungy, kind of cool. It was a cool place. It was authentic. And so that's why I love that Request is still there. And the fact that Joe, the owner now, and here's a funny story related to comics, is Joe Aloha, the guy who owns it now, when he was young, he was a young entrepreneur. There across the street from Request on Main Street, there was a bookstore called Annie's Bookstop. Inside Annie's Bookstop, there was actually a back corner in the right called Joe's Comics. And Annie, the bookstore owner, would let Joe Aloha set up his books and comics and sell comics out of there. And I didn't know that was him, but that's one of the comic stores I always went to as a kid. And when I told him that I needed help, I needed a place for my store, I didn't even have to convince him. He was like, move it into my Request Music. And I didn't even know that was an option or he would be open to it. And I was like, I wish I knew that was an option. I would have done that like years ago, man. I would have done that first thing, you know? And then come to find out Joe and his deal with Annie's Bookstore. And I'm like, oh, no wonder why you're so open to doing it, is because somebody did that for you and you did really well. And so working with Request Music is awesome. It's a match made in heaven. Like nothing goes better together than like music and comics, man. Like you got the hip hop heads, you got the metal heads, and everybody loves comics. It doesn't matter who they are, man. Everybody loves comics, you know?
Wow, that's like a blessing, like almost like turning a negative into a positive and moving out of that place and just finding like a perfect mesh for your store.
I have chicken skin right now is because some things are just like, they happen in a way that like blow your mind. Because I literally, as a kid, Joe's comics, Joe Aloha's comics was one of my first exposures to comics, and X-Men #1 was on sale when his store was open, and that's where I bought my copy of X-Men #1. And so this, so and everybody remembers X-Men #1. That was like blew the lid off of everything, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that it was like it was an epic moment, you know. There's also, but you know, I can't deny that the other stores that were around, like Future Treasures, which was right outside of the big fun factory in Kahului, there was a little card store called Future Treasures. Come to find out that my very good friend Chris Wong, a local collector, his mom was one of the co-owners of Future Treasures. So it's like, as a kid, I never thought I would know who these people were. They were like beyond me, you know. They're just like comic store owners or the people who like made my childhood, but I would never get to know them. And coming to find out, and Maui's so small that like we're all connected, you know, and now everybody's connected to Maui comics. And and I'm not saying this in a negative way. I feel like it's not even my store, you know. I feel like it belongs to everybody, and I have a certain responsibility to keep it at a certain level. You know, some people will tell me things that they like about the store and things that they don't like about the store, and things that maybe they want to change or things they want to keep the same. And I'm constantly considering all of that when I'm working the store and like trying to just make it a good experience for everybody, so it doesn't leave too many people out, you know. Everybody's gonna have, there's always somebody who might have a negative reaction to something, but I try to do my best not to leave anybody out of it.
Well, I think that you're doing honor to all the the legacies that's come before you. I personally don't know anything about the Maui community because I never lived there. Like Mark lived there when he was on radios. That's how he knows your nerd watch guys and all that.
I feel bad for man knowing free money.
And so that's kind of just staying back and listening to this stuff. Like just the fact that you bought X-Men. So did you buy X-Men #1 off the rack?
Yeah. He had like a little rack in the back corner of Annie's bookstop, and that's where I bought my X-Men #1. That's where I bought my Sabretooth #1. I bought, remember those Marvel Masterpieces ones when they would have the art in them?
Yeah.
I bought a bunch of those over there. Like I remember what books I bought at what store because I was so in love with comics that each comic was a new experience for me. It's like I would, just fall in love every time I saw something new.
Right? Oh man. I mean, back in the days, I used to get a Jellies on Oahu because that was what the big other realms when they were at Word Warehouse, and I'll get my comics there. But I always knew that, like back in when the early '90s, when the big boom happened, when the Image guys got their stuff going, and Todd McFarlane was like the hottest thing, Jim Lee, all those guys. That Maui had a few, and then all of a sudden they just disappeared. And
all of them,
I think it's because of the fact that there was like millions of books sold 1 month, and then 2 months later they're down to like 20,000 books a month. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so, like the industry got wiped, man.
Yeah, and so that I was actually I was talking to a friend of mine at I think you know him. I know Francisco.
Oh yeah, Francisco.
Yeah, he was talking about he was talking about the old days when that boom happened and it kind of killed the industry for a while because they're making now there's no exclusivity. Like before, it was like 20,000 copies were made, you got to get one. Now there's like 8.9 million copies, and you got long boxes sitting at Jellies just collecting dust, and they're like trying to get rid of them like a penny a comic. But there's only so many times you can read that same comic. At one point, for Christmas, I went to Jellies. I bought like penny comics out of took out the staples and used them as wrapping paper. That's how bad it was. But I'm glad that you're bringing comics back to Maui. The Maui community, just like anybody else, like surfers and all that, they draw. They love Wolverine too. They love Batman and whatever, and they paint them on the bottoms of their surfboards and all that kind of stuff, especially boogie boards. But there's a lot of people that still love comics, but they just never had access to it until you brought that back. So I just want to say that, man, because I've always had a respect for you and what you do out there in Maui. So
I really appreciate that, man. That means a lot. I really, and that I think a lot of, I don't know, there was some kind of explosion in Hawaii about the scene or whatever. A lot of things started happening around 2014. My store opened in 2015, but these other conventions kind of started up and amazing. And so, I got to give props to you too, Free, for going out there in the community. And you are a very hardworking dude in the community. I would see you at a lot of events. You would do a lot of events, and it's just cool because you'd be giving. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the reason your name, I could be totally wrong, but this is what's circulating in the comic community, is the reason they call you Free is because you would do free sketches.
Well, there's that too.
Is there a deeper story?
Well, I got my name from a long time ago when I first started doing graffiti art. In fact, I think it was Vice or something that just came out with a documentary about this tunnel called the Freedom Tunnel in New York, and the guy that discovered it, his name was Freedom. And you have to go through, you have to literally jump down, go across, jump down again into an abandoned train station, and then you can spray paint whatever you want. And it was called the Freedom Tunnel. And the guy was going more into corporate stuff. He was making money now, and he was like, "Dude, I'm gonna stop. You want to take my name?" And keep in mind, I was 16. I didn't tell anybody I was leaving Hawaii. I was on the missing persons list for 2 weeks.
Holy shit.
I could have had the Alika Seki mentality of just go for it, bro. And the guy's name, he wanted me to be Freedom too. And at the time, my name was Spirit. So I just told him, how about if I just put in Freedom, just as free? And he's like, all right. So that's where I started free from. And then from there, I became a DJ. So now it's DJ free. And then I got to comics like years and years later. So I just kept that name, but I do free sketches at my tables at conventions, and when I do free comic book day at other realms. And at free comic book day, I'll sit there from 7 in the morning, well, 8 in the morning to about 9 o'clock at night. No bathroom break, no nothing. I just draw for everybody.
That's what I'm talking about. You're a hustler, man, and it's always to support the love of the community. Like these kids, I'm sure it's not easy doing commissions for kids. Like grown adults is one thing, but kids are like telling you all this kind of stuff, and you know what I mean?
You do a Batman, SpongeBob riding a My Little Pony.
But that's what I'm saying.
With a lightsaber.
Straight up, you're a saint for doing that, because even being an artist is you artists have a chance to, really capitalize and make money. And sometimes they're not giving value for what they produce. They're just worried about getting paid and then moving on. And I really appreciate that about you, seeing you in the community, and you're trying to at the same time spread a love of the art and not just, glorify yourself and peace out, so I think that's awesome.
Well, I know this is about you, but but when I first moved to Las Vegas, and I was more into DJing stuff, and then I finally got into the comic book industry. I actually told myself that I wanted to have a connection still to Hawaii, and so when I had the opportunity to do the free comic book day at other realms and do Francisco's comic and toy expo, I jumped on the opportunity, and so that way I could meet the like Stan Campos and John J. Murakami, all those guys. And I really like the fact that we're still together. We're all still supporting each other, like DJ, the Chris's from Mana Comics, like all those guys. So,
yeah, if you notice my poster in the background, I set it up so you guys.
Yeah.
Sent me a Amakua poster, so I had to rep that.
Right? Yeah, that's awesome. But again, it's a community, and it's just like I brought the Hawaii spirit of community to the Las Vegas comic community by starting kind of like what Sam did with the comic collective. I did a comic collective here in Vegas that it went from 5 people sitting at a table to over 150 people showing up in a comic shop, and the owner's like, okay, free, stop. Like, okay, I love you, free, but we gotta kind of tone this down to 30 people.
That's good, man. At least people respond well, and that's
right.
That's
good. So what time is it, Mark?
We had about 10, about an hour in. A little bit less than an hour because we started a little bit late, so we got time for now.
Yeah, sorry, I kind of talk your guys' ears off.
Oh no, that's what it's all about. It's about everyone in the chat saying it's a freaking incredible life story about going to college and your grandparents or your great grandparents or your grandparents opening that steel works in Maui, and they're learning a lot about the history, of not only yourself but about a lot of things. So everyone's definitely enjoying it.
If anyone was interested in the history of the Seki machine shop, so 1959 seems like a long time from World War II when the bombing of Pearl Harbor happened. And the reason there was a gap between there, they opened that warehouse. Arizumi Brothers built that Seki machine shop in Wailuku in 1959. Before that, if you guys are familiar, anybody who's been to Maui, if you've been to Takamiya Market. People love Takamiya Market. That's where you get your teriyaki or chicken teriyaki or burger mix or whatever when you're barbecuing your beers. In Happy Valley, so it's a pretty rugged area. So only the locals is gonna brave Happy Valley to go to Takamiya Market. So
yeah, that's kind of like a conundrum where it's like Happy Valley, but it's kind of not so happy. If you don't know the people living there, you're not going to be too happy.
I love that, man. But people don't know this. This is a nice piece of history. Is that Takamiya Market? If you look on the left side, there's a road that goes back, and there's some houses back there. the original Seki machine shop, before we had that warehouse, before they opened the Seki machine shop on Mill Street, the original Seki machine shop was in a garage on that back road behind Takamiya Market.
Oh.
Wow.
So if you guys wanted some deep Maui trivia there.
You never know when it might come in handy. So put down in the lockbox and lock it up.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, your whole family has been ingrained in the Maui culture for so long.
My great grandfather is the one who came here in 1896. And so my grandfather was born here in H. Poco in 1911. And he was the youngest out of all of them, though. So some of his brothers were actually born in Japan. And then they went back to Japan one time for a family picture. And then later on, my grandfather would go back to Japan again in his 30s to go find our mon, our family crest, at a family gravesite. So he actually came back with that information, which was, I mean, if my grandfather hadn't done that, then we wouldn't know our history, you know. So my grandpa was a really studious guy. Like I said, he was a Japanese language teacher before the war broke out. And he's a true samurai man, you know, just really, really studious.
Wow. Well, I mean, again, dude, like I honestly thought that you'd come on the show just be about like, oh yeah, I got this comic.
Be like, hey guys, check out my comics. Look at this stuff. You hit us with all this history and culture. What kind of podcast is this?
What the heck?
What happened here?
Like engineering and drafting, and I'm like, what? So, man. So,
Yeah.
Okay, of all the guys that have stopped by your shop, who is like the one that really kind of put you in the awe? Like, wow, I can't believe he's in my shop.
I mean, you know, I hate to just like, because it's obvious, is when Jim Lee visited. And, you know, what's really cool about that is we met Jim Lee at Amazing Comic Con that weekend. We were on Oahu at Amazing Comic Con for that. And that was the first time the Maui crew had gone out to the outer islands, and we didn't know what to expect. We thought we were the smallest fish in the biggest pond and nobody would give a crap about us. And I will tell you the truth, I feel like it was weird. Our crew was so tight and so solid. We had, you know, Swan was with us, Swan Ko'okele. I'm sure you met him and talked with him. He's a good brother. And we had the Nerdwatch podcast crew, and we had the Maui Comics crew, and we had, you know, everybody together. And our Aloha vibe was like I was just feeling this amazing vibe, man. And every other comic store, even the comic stores that had drama amongst each other, you know, you hear it on Oahu, people talk back and forth about each other, this and that. It's just the nature of things and living in the city. But everybody, they came over to our place, and everybody spent just a little while talking story. And I felt like it was like they were getting back in touch with how it used to be, at least, where everybody was just super aloha to each other, and just it was so open, and everybody was meeting each other. And to me, that was a very epic, amazing Comic-Con. I think that was a 2016 Comic-Con, and we met so many people from other islands, and we introduced ourselves to other islands. And I feel like that sense of community, that connection that everybody made, endures today. Like, I think a lot of the connections that I made going to Oahu and meeting people face to face, and even us, man, like getting familiar with each other. And like, I feel like making these connections and just doing what we can to hold them together, instead of, you know, so many people are in their little bubble and they think they're the superhero of their own story, and that they're the little engine that could, and they chug and chug until they break down, and then they beg for everybody's help. Is like, I feel like everybody is trust each other enough, and we have a lot of respect for each other, that we look at what we all do, and we all try to help each other. You know, that's the special thing about Hawaii and being from Hawaii, is that there's a lot of talent here, and we don't have a lot of resources, but what we do have is togetherness. We have aloha for each other, and we try to look out for each other, you know. So I think that's why we have a fighting chance, people from Hawaii, of making it big nationally, because we have things that nobody else has, you know. Everybody feels so alone nowadays.
Dude, I love the way you put stuff, man. Like, well, I totally agree with you. Like a lot of times, especially here in like Vegas and California and all that, I talk to a lot of shop owners and even like coordinators for other shows that I do, and like they, there's a lot of here and there, back and forth, and talking behind their backs and all that kind of stuff. It's very but in Hawaii, even though there's competitive, there's still communicative. Where, hey, if like say for example, if you had a question that Mike would know, you'd be like, oh yeah, I went through that before. You can do this, and this. Or if you have a question that, like, how can I get this person in my shop? Other Rones would be like, oh, this is how you can get in contact with them. So
and that's I mean, it's funny you see that because me and Mike work together on a lot of things. Like he just wants, and he's an outer island. When you're not Oahu, people don't understand. Hilo, Maui, we have to work really hard to make things happen for us because we're not in a flashy area. We're not in we don't have all the attention, and we help each other out. Like if an artist is coming to him, he'll give me a call and be like, hey, you want to parlay that into an appearance with you? Same with me. If I have somebody big who's talked to me, I'll bring up Mike guys and see if they're open to doing Hilo too. And I, we try to share as much as possible and look out for each other. And even Ted Mays from Gecko's Comics. When I was first opening my store, he's a veteran, man. He's been in the industry a long time. And he picked up my phone call. He gave me like 3 hours of his time, man. And he answered every question I had about opening a store and being with Diamond and things. So it's like these guys, man, they really do care about comics. It's impressive.
The few times that I've been to Ted's shop, I used to go there all the time because I live kind of in the Kamiku area, and he was never nice to me.
Here's the thing, man.
But then again, in his defense, I would want to look at the comics, and I'd stay there for like a couple of hours just looking at little miniature figures, and I wouldn't buy anything. So
I totally get it. I've heard the same thing, and I've even as a customer in Ted shop, if he is not in the mood, he'll be short with you and stuff. That's just Ted. The other thing is like living in Boston for so long, it gave me this city edge to the point where I have a more tolerance for like Ted's from New York originally, so people don't realize that some of the edge is from that New York City. It stays with people. Like same with Joe Rubenstein. People were afraid to meet the guy because they heard like, oh, I heard he's kind of mean and this and that. And when I met him, when I talked story with him, and I can get where people would think that because he would, say mean things, you know what I mean? But if you live in a city and you can kind of move, if you can let your pride not get too hurt by the initial insult that they say, you can
honestly, I think because I listen to Bill Burr all the time. He's an East Coast from Boston. And even he said, like, man, you get a tough skin when you live on the East Coast. And Joe Rubenstein, I actually bunked with him. I was a roommate with him for San Diego. We do a lot of shows together.
Nice.
Because we work with the same agent. And so we get booked in a lot of shows together. And the stories that he can tell is ridiculous.
He's like
you talk about Neil Adams, though.
Yeah.
You talk about Neil Adams, and he'll just go off. Fuck that guy. Blah, blah, blah.
Well, you want to talk about something with a notorious dick? That's Neil Adams, man.
But the thing is, though, for all the artists that went to the Neil Adams boot camp in Marvel, look at where they are now, though.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. Is, like, you got to understand. Sometimes you got to be like have a pretty like harsh, stern demeanor when you're approaching life. Sometimes it's good to kick yourself in the ass and get going. I talk about all this aloha and togetherness, but sometimes when I was in Boston, I was by myself, bro. I was like, and it was a pretty rugged environment for me. Everybody treated me like an outsider because I'm from Hawaii. So it's like and my name is Alika Seki. It's not a very howly name, so I definitely was not well received. People would see my name and they'd be like, "Oh, great," you know what I mean? So But that edge helps me too. It's like if I need to kick myself in the ass and go the road by myself, I have that in me. It's not my preferred route. I love to work with people. I love love. I love Aloha, man. I love sharing with people. So that's my preferred mode. But I got both of it in me. Like if times get hard and I gotta go myself, I can.
Right, you gotta just put the boots on the ground and just keep going. So, I got a question. Like, I know you have two sons, right?
Yeah.
Are they into comics? Are they into drawing and all that stuff, kind of like you?
Yes, my oldest. So they're 10 and 6. My oldest, Caleb. I just recently gave him his first Usagi Yojimbo comics, and when Stan Sakai came here, Stan, God, what a humble, nice, and he's got Hawaii ties. He's originally from Oahu, and so he's just such a humble, nice dude, man, and he deserves every ounce of success he's ever earned. He's worked so hard, and so, but when he came here, he's a great dude. He's actually, after he came here, and I can't believe it. It's like somebody that big and famous actually sincerely cares about how we're doing over here. When he heard my store wasn't doing too well, he sent us a care package of stuff that's worth over $2,000, and
Wow.
I got and it's Usagi Yojimbo stuff, so people wanted to buy it. It wasn't like stuff I couldn't sell. I sold it, and that really gave my store a boost to help us survive. We're still around, thanks in part to Stan Sakai helping us out, and so I'm not trying to have a big head about it. I'm just as baffled as anybody else that he actually pays attention to Hawaii and he cares about us. And so I don't want to take advantage of that connection. The guy is super awesome. I never would want to make him look bad or anything. But when I gave my son the Usagi comics, I said, we know him. We can send these sketches to him. And my son, like, his eyes lit up. He's like, yeah, Dad, let's send this off. And so I mailed it to Stan, and Stan, he thought it was awesome. He thought the drawings were great, and he posted them up on his social media, and he shouted out my son, and I was like, oh man, at 10 years old, you're getting shouted out by Stan Sakai, man. You
don't even know.
I don't know how good he got it right now.
It's funny because Stan Sakai, he has a connection to me because I took a class from him back in the day, so I call him Sensei. And
Nice.
then, actually, Mark, did you go to Kamiki?
Yeah.
And I think he did a few classes at Kamiki too. I mean, I don't know if Mark ever took his class, but got taught at Kamiki and McKinley before. So,
Oh wow.
there's a connection.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, I love that man. And the fact that Usagi Yojimbo is getting a Netflix series coming up is like that, more power to him. I hope it parlays into more and more. I hope that his cartoon, the animated series, it surpasses the popularity of the animated Turtles, because I think that the material is worthy. I think that there's such a universe there to be explored, and the sky's the limit. I think this is like, he's an older guy. He's put his time in, but his success is just so long overdue. He needs it.
Yeah.
The world wants to know Stan Sakai.
Well, I mean, I think going with Netflix is probably the best way to do it because his material is based in rural Japan. So there's a lot of samurai and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so if they go with the origin, and like how in book 2, the origin of the samurai, like his stuff, man, I'm gonna just melt in my seat. But yeah, like I'm glad he's getting a Usagi Yojimbo on its own, so that way they can tell his story instead of having it. Oh, we went back in time when we saw this rabbit. Cowabunga, dude. I mean, I love the ninjas, but
yeah, man.
Usagi deserves his own stuff.
He deserves his own spotlight for a change.
Yeah. How you doing, Mark?
Oh no, I'm a fly on the wall. You know what I'm saying?
Dude, like seriously, we can talk later.
Yeah, man. I love your guys' show. I love when you guys have guys from other islands and people who I have heard of but don't know too much about. It's very enlightening. When you had what was the Japanese Iron Man, the guy?
Ryan.
Yeah.
Asian Tony Stark.
Stark, bro. Bro, yeah, you guys have some good interviews. I definitely, you can tell you guys did radio before. I mean, to me, that's what makes or breaks a podcast or a show. Is any idiot with a opinion can have a YouTube show or whatever, but you got to have some broadcast experience to make it listenable. You know, you can't just cold turkey get in there. You know.
Well, I have to hand it to Mike. He's the one that does all the production and all that kind of stuff. Like I just get the interview, like the people. Like for example, we had Lanaya a couple of weeks ago.
Oh yeah, I watched that one. I caught it live, and then I had to do something, but I wanted to. Wow, that was sick, man.
Yeah, he's an amazing personality because he does so much. I mean, he's an Emmy award winning. So we've worked with him before. We like to do stuff that like people from Hawaii that are doing inspirational things, like Linnea Hoffman, Jalen, you. I'm trying to get Mike Sato on the podcast because you know me, and I'm not talking shit about Mike, but that guy can talk.
So if you know Mike, you know he can talk. So get him on camera, get him on a microphone.
Right, get him on. Just give him 2 hours. Here you go. So it's supposed to be an hour-long podcast, but there you go, Mike. 3 hours later.
Yeah.
I absolutely I love him.
Yeah. He's a great guy.
But yeah, what is the time, Mark?
Oh, we're like 10:30 right now.
Well, because I keep asking about the time because I know Mark technically right now in Vegas it's about 10:30, and I know that Mark has a family and he's got all kinds of stuff. So
I'm just chilling. You know what I mean? I'm enjoying the history and the culture. Like I said, not the interview I expected, but I'm thoroughly enjoying it.
I appreciate you guys having me on because I really do enjoy the show.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it. Like when we talk to people, like sometimes they're exactly what we expect, and sometimes they're nothing what we expect.
So a little tidbit. Before I even knew Alika, before I even talked to him, I knew that he had Maui comics, and I just went out to Other Realms and Hilo with Enjoy Comics and Other Realms in Oahu, and I wanted to see if I could do a tour, doing the island tour. And Maui, really wanted Maui to be one of my stops, but I didn't realize that those guys like Layfield and Jim Lee and all those guys, they just stopped by because they stopped by. I didn't realize it. So,
I know that's what made me feel bad is like while I make enough money to support my family and stuff, my comic store is not a big money maker. I'm not trying to make any secrets about that. I'm not like ashamed of it or anything, but it also limits the budget for doing events and things like that. And so I want you to come to Maui too, but I also know that it's expensive to do things like that and so when people see all those big names coming to my store and they assume that I like paid to get them here I
assume that.
And so they're just talking in. And so when we started talking, I felt so awful because like I didn't realize that was the assumption that I had a budget to pay for all these guys, yet for some reason I wouldn't want to pay for free to come here. And like so far from the truth. Like if I had the budget, I would be having artists out here every other day. Like they would,
I actually wanted to apologize for that because I felt like I didn't know the situation, but at the same time, I was doing a tour that the facilitators were paying for certain things. Like say for example with Enjoy Comics with Mike, we got our own airfare, but he set us up in a hotel because he knew the people that ran the hotel, so he got the homie deals, right?
Yeah,
so I was thinking like that, but and I was telling Jax like, dude, I really want to go to Maui. Dude, Maui's gonna be dope. Like I got a lot of people there that I know, like Kaleo Carter. I know like AZV and all these people that he knows from Maui also. And so I was like, if we set up shop and start selling our stuff and at the comic shop, then we could really do well and have people come into the shop. But yeah, I felt so bad after that conversation. I was like, I didn't know, man. Like,
No,
I wanted
it's
to
like,
apologize.
the thing
It
is,
still
like,
rings in my head.
the thing is, like, miscommunication is some of the biggest. One thing I've realized in my life is that miscommunication is one of the biggest tragedies ever. Like, so many connections and so many opportunities are just foregone and don't even happen. Is so heartbreaking because a miscommunication will happen, maybe something like that, and instead of clearing it up with, like when you're watching a movie and the plot is going on and the entire plot could be stopped by two people having one conversation, and like, they, you know what I mean, is that. And so in my life, that's one thing I, being, just being a talkative guy, being a nerdy guy, and being kind of into things, is I think it's important to dedicate yourself to articulation, and it adds to the understanding of a situation, because we're all in the same mission. So as once we realize that and clear out anything miscommunication, then we're, the future is open. Like we can work from there.
And I think because we're both very open to, like, say, yeah, this is the real deal. And I said, oh, okay, I'm sorry. No, I didn't know. Because of that communication, we remain friends. And later on, when this COVID thing is done, and I go back to Hawaii for, a free comic book day or whatever next year, then I'm still going to want to do that tour. And this way I know the situation. So I still want to go to your shop. You know what I mean?
Oh,
I never been there.
So, we could make get you here. We would.
But yeah.
Yeah. Because Maui asks about you, man. Like, trust me, when they see you going around at other stores and stuff, they ask if you're coming by, and I'm just diplomatic about it. I'm like, I don't think he's coming to Maui this time, but they ask about you, man. So people they want to see you out here.
Well, I'm hoping that I'm a part of the community enough where they want me to be there, and that just to be at your shop and have a good time all together. We go eat someplace after.
Yeah.
You're gonna be hungry.
Well, hit up AZD. Maybe he can get Maui Watch to sponsor something.
Yeah. So you're a part of another podcast. Well, go ahead and tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So AZD. So AZD, everybody knows him as the guy who runs Maui Watch. Maui Watch is pretty well known. And then Nerd Watch, of course, was a subsidiary of Maui Watch. G Money, Greg Turner, he's another radio DJ. And so, but when AZD and G Money get together, they have a show that's called The Big Fat Nation. Not very politically correct because they're two big fat dudes, but but their show is great because they're two professional broadcasters, and so whatever they do, their voices are perfect, man. They do great on radio. I give them a lot of crap. It's just funny because we trash talk each other. That's kind of how me and G Money are, anyways. It's kind of like where we feel comfortable. But I think they're both talented broadcasters. I'm always in awe of what they can do.
Well, how did you get involved with Nerd Watch? Because there's like 5 or 6 guys on Nerd Watch.
You know what? That's actually a pretty funny story in itself, because they were doing Nerd Watch before the comic store was open. It was Greg, G Money, it was Format, and a couple other people who aren't even doing Nerd Watch anymore. There was Digit Amber, who did DVD reviews. There was Collector J. He's no longer living on Maui. So they were doing Nerd Watch. They were about 60 episodes in when they got introduced to me at a collector swap, and they decided to do a podcast at the collector swap. So they interviewed the people at the collector swap. I was one of them. I could tell, it's hard because G Money has an ego, man. He doesn't like to admit it, but he does. And he doesn't like, he has the Nerd Watch. He had all the nerd cred in the room. And I don't think he liked how interesting the interview was. Like I sat down and talked with him, and we kind of had a good interview. And I joke with him, even to this day, he says it got deleted, or he never posted it. And I was like, oh, man, yeah. I was like, that interview, man? Was I like too good or something? And
you know you still have it.
I know he still has it, and I was giving him crap, and you know, at the time I was like, man, you call your show the Nerd Watch, but you guys aren't that nerdy, man. Is like, I'm a comic guy. I'm in a comic store. I want to hear some comic stuff. It's like, why don't you guys ever talk about comic stuff? You know, Format's a video game guy, so that's pretty nerdy. But G Money's over there talking about like mainstream movies. He's a movie nerd. It's not necessarily comic book stuff. And I'm like, gee, man, you got to make this stuff more nerdy. And so eventually, and he was dragging his ass. I think all the other cast members wanted to do it except him. He did not want to do the podcast in the comic store. He didn't want the comic store to be a part of the podcast. He want, you know, it's Nerd Watch is G Money's baby. He created that. He birthed it with Professor Barry. And I understand they want to protect their brand, and they don't want me to have too much sway over their brand or anything. And I don't. Like, I don't try to change things. I don't do anything. I had to bait them into my store. I was like, come here, guys. Come into the comics. Come do and now that the podcast is in the comic store, now people like it, man. People are like, this is some nerdy stuff. I want to listen to this stuff. I'm like, come on, G.
Well, just looking at the background, that's the reason why a lot of the comic artists in Vegas go to comic shops and draw. Is because you get to look up and see comic books. You get to look up and see Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, whatever. And it gives that atmosphere of being a community. So when it went into the shop, that's when I started watching. Like before that, I didn't even know you guys existed. But that's the truth, you know.
Yeah, but it's true. But that's the thing is, like, I told Gio, I was like, man, if he wasn't such an asshole, like, it's funny because me and him really have this, like, you know, surface tension. We're two different people. We're nothing alike, you know. We have friction on a lot of different issues and whatever. But we still, you know, we still appreciate each other. We're still friends. But the thing is, like, he really was kind of reluctant to allow me and the comic shop into their Nerd Watch. And then when he finally started opening it up and bringing the more nerdier guys, that's when Gannon came on. That's when I came on. And so the Nerd Watch started getting really nerdy. And I thought it was a match made in heaven. But I also don't want to hurt his pride and like start, you know, taking credit for that. But I'm just like, come on, man. You guys had to get nerdy. You got nerdy. Be happy about it.
It's like having a Maui watch, but you're on Kauai. It doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you gotta have that nerd element.
But he loves to not give me any credit for making it more nerdy. So that's whatever, G Money. Go ahead.
Whatever, G Money.
Yeah.
What is it? Nation? I mean, I've talked to G Money before at I think Amazing, and I think at Honolulu or Comic-Con Honolulu, and he was nice, you know.
Oh, he's a great guy, yeah.
Yeah,
but he's a total asshole.
We all have our ego, dude. I honestly, I have my ego. You know, I'll straight up tell people like, this is mine. I started this. I did this. Ain't nobody gonna take it away from me. So I get it, but at the same time, I look at it like, if it helps make it better, then I put my ego to the side. Say, how can we integrate? How can we integrate this? So I don't lose identity, but we can enhance the product. So,
yeah.
The
Nerd Watch. He cares about the Nerd Watch, but he was definitely like reluctant, especially because it's me. You know, I'm kind of outspoken. He's an outspoken guy. He doesn't want to compete with anybody.
That's funny. that inner turmoil. I want it to be nerdy, but I don't want it to be nerdy. I want to talk about Mrs. Doubtfire in 1996.
You always want to talk about these, like, the Emmys and the, you know, I'm just like, there's nothing nerdy about that.
unless you get the Emmy for best sci-fi, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, you got, man.
But yeah, talking about Angelina Jolie is not nerdy. But
yeah.
That's funny. But again, you guys have good chemistry when you're doing your podcast.
I think it's a great dynamic. None of us are acting like that's just how we act to each other. You know, we give each other a hard time. We, you know, and each of us has a thick enough skin where we don't take it personal and get upset about it. We know, we're just trying to talk story and be honest with our opinions.
Yeah, I like that. Where can you see Nerd Watch?
Mostly the Nerd Watch. We've been doing live Facebook streams. So if you want to see the Nerd Watch, but if you listen to the Nerd Watch afterwards, G will edit it into an audio show. You can check that out on Audio Boom, on Spotify, on iTunes, pretty much any podcast aggregate. I think G Money has those bases covered.
And it's the Nerd Watch, right?
The Nerd Watch, yeah. Which, okay. I mean, there are other Nerd Watches too out there. So it's like, you can tell we only care about Maui. Because if we were trying to do national, I would be like, G Money, you got to change the name, because ABC News actually has a thing called Nerd Watch. And then there's this other little nerd group on Facebook called Nerd Watch 2020. And so I always rip on G by promoting Nerd Watch 2020 on his podcast.
Dude, hilarious. Just knowing that he's just fuming on the inside.
So no, I'm just like, but he doesn't want to change the name, and I'm like, well, so many other people have it, so it's like, only Maui people know who we are. Once you start getting the broader audience, there's some brand confusion.
Well, I know that AZD. What did AZD call Maui Watch before Maui Watch?
Oh, the Taguma Watch, because it was about Taguma, right? That's the origination of it. It was basically
about Taguma. Like, yeah. He retired, right? I had never gotten a ticket from Taguma. And then like the month he retired, 1 week, I got 2 tickets from Taguma in the same week. That fucker could smell me. He was like, I never gave him a ticket. I'm going to give him 2.
Yeah. Before I retire, I got to get this guy. Yeah, that's how Maui Watch progressed, was actually from Taguma Watch, which was a big, like a thing on their radio show back in the day. Like, people would call in and say, oh, Taguma's over here. So it's Taguma Watch. He's over here on whatever highway, so watch out. Giving tickets in Wailuku Town or whatever.
Most of the time, he was in the library.
HBD actually told him, "Hey, you cannot do that, you."
yeah, they got in legal trouble,
right?
Yeah, so that's why it became Maui Watch.
HBD's like, "Yeah, do that again, we're gonna give you a ticket for obstruction." So like, okay, yeah, it's Maui Watch now. So that's why you can tell G Money. It's like, dude, it's just like Taguma Watch and then people, Maui Watch. But
you guys got to be watching Maui stuff.
Dude, I'm getting kind of hungry.
I'm sorry. What time is it? It's like 10:45.
What you doing for the rest of the night, man?
Me? Actually, the Nerd Watch is filming, so I'm probably going to jump in late on that episode. And...
Are they in the shop right now?
No, so we've been doing socially distant. We've been doing it via Zoom lately. But Maui has actually been doing kind of good. We did actually have some more cases this week, but we only have 8 active cases on the island. We were at one point considering getting back in person to doing like a safe version of the Nerd Watch. That's probably like a month or so out, but we're still doing it via Zoom.
Well, that's good, man. I'm glad you're, keeping your social distance, keeping it safe. You do have kids, and of course you have the rest of your family that might not be, 25 years old and healthy.
Yeah, exactly.
So, we all gotta do our part to keep each other safe. So, right on.
Yeah, same with you guys, man. It's good that you guys are. Well, you're in different states now.
Well, okay, but to be honest though, like when I was staying at his house because I was stranded in California. By the way, thank you, Mark, for keeping me for 3 months. We only went to get our groceries and food. Come right back. There's no physical touching of anybody else. Very social distance. We stayed home. That's why none of us got sick. Knock on wood. Even when I come back to Vegas, I have 2 roommates, and none of us really, we haven't. we kept like 6 feet apart of each other in the house. So,
yeah, I mean that's awesome that Mark, that you helped out John over there so much, and that's really cool, man. Like that's what I'm talking about, Hawaii, man. Everybody takes
Yeah,
care.
we had no problem with it. Like he was in a situation. First, he just came over just to like, cause my family's like, oh, invite him over since he's gonna ride this thing out by himself. Little did they know, 3 months later, he was still there.
Well,
But
you guys can sell the story to Owen Wilson, and he can make a movie about it. That's awesome. Well, I'm glad you good.
I'm getting a little hungry. You're probably gonna jump on Zoom with the Nerd Watch crew.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me
here, Mark.
What's that?
We do have a tradition here.
Oh, okay, but we can't let you off the hook that easy. But before we let you go, we have a thing that we like to call Try Answer Fast Kai. Now, what that is?
You guys triple and I with this one.
Yeah, so you already know the deal. Free's gonna read you 10 rapid fire questions. You got a few seconds to answer them. If you do, great. If you don't, great. It's all in fun. There's no prizes involved, so.
Ah, dang.
Well, I gave you one of my 25-cent comics I got from Jellies.
Prize. I'm into that.
Right, but again, like the more you answer, the more it's just fun. So try and answer it.
Yeah,
you're gonna get a few seconds. Rapid fire. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. Number 1. Who would win in a fight? You with a bat or 100 cats?
Are you kidding me? Those cats are dust, man. I would annihilate those cats. You don't even know.
Number 2. Would you rather eat 10 cockroaches, the flying B-52s, or 100 Carolina Reaper peppers?
I don't even think I could handle one of those peppers. Can I cook the cockroaches?
Yeah, right. You can do whatever you like to it.
Oh, yeah, fried cockroaches all the way.
All right, number 3. Would you rather watch a porno with you starring in it and your parents are watching, or watch a porno starring your parents?
Oh, God. You know what? That's a pretty rough question for a kid who grew up in a porno.
Should be an easy one for you.
You know what? Frick. You know what? The one of me being in a porno and my parents watching it is kind of easier because I can kind of pretend that they didn't watch it. Like I don't have to. I can just make the porno and then be done with it. The other one is like you see that parents porno and you're like, no, your life is different. So my answer is I would make the porno.
Okay.
I don't care.
All right, number 4. Favorite female comic character?
Shoot. There was one that was like super prominent on the tip of my tongue, and I just lost her. Angela is a badass design. I'll say that. There are much better female characters though that I'm like drawing a blank on right now. And I seem like a real a-hole.
You know what?
There's like really good female protagonists. Lola XOXO is actually a really good.
Yeah. Good answer.
Yes.
I'm fun with either one, man. The Todd McFarlane version of Angela, whatever her name is, that design was dope. And Sia Om, that Lola XOXO is awesome. I love that character. All right, number 5. What would be your superhero power?
I've always wanted to fly. As a kid, there's just like no other freer feeling than flight, right? So it's like, why not? That I would want to fly.
Okay, now that you've answered that, the rest of the question was, what would your superhero power be? And you said flight, but now you actually have to have the opposite. So you're like flat on the ground with gravity.
Oh, that's rough, dude.
Number 6, 100 sit-ups or 100 push-ups?
Sit-ups. My arms are kind of like twigs right now.
All right, number 7, Silver Surfer. Who's a better surfer, Silver Surfer or Kelly Slater?
Kelly Slater, obviously. Silver Surfer doesn't even touch water. He surfs like the sky. That's not hard.
Before I never used to like Kelly Slater. Like the one time I met him, he was kind of a dick. But
Yeah.
But you can't deny his talent, though. Right.
Yeah, man.
Number 8, would you rather run naked in Maui Mall or swim naked the length of Big Beach?
Oh, I would swim naked the length of Big Beach. Shit, how you know I haven't done that already?
Okay. Number 9, of all the guys on Nerd Watch, you have to hug one naked. Who would it be?
G Money, because he'd be able to hide more of my nakedness.
You just run full course and just
Yeah, I would wrap G Money around me to hide me being naked.
Die. Okay, now this is another tradition that we do. We end the top 10 crazy questions fast time with who do you think looks stink and who do you think not stink? So do they stink or they don't stink?
I remember this. Yeah.
Okay. Johnny Depp.
He looks like he would stink, man.
He looks at even without the pirate stuff. Like just walk around.
He's rich. I know he's rich and like he probably wears all kind of cologne and stuff, but his hair looks like he doesn't wash it, bro.
Like, you can just tell his underarms smell like onions. Okay.
Yeah.
Julia Roberts.
Well, I mean, she doesn't look stink. She obviously looks like she smells. She smelled good, obviously.
At one point, she wasn't shaving her underarms, so she had the hairy underarms. Like one-time deal, though. So, all right. Russell Crowe.
It depends. I say Russell Crowe depends. If you catch him like Jag in the middle of the day and it's hot, and that guy's gonna stink, man. He's gonna be all sweaty. But you catch him at a nice dinner, he's like, all dressed up, probably gonna have, smell good.
All right. Rihanna.
I would say she smells good because she sounds so nice and pretty. I don't know. Maybe that's a wrong judgment on that.
I mean, I know she sweats on stage, but off stage, I think she cleans up. Right?
Yeah. Plus, certain people when they sweat, they don't stink so bad. Is like, I work with one guy. All he did was like eat protein bars and shakes and stuff. When that guy sweats, that stink like eggs, man.
Hey, Tina Fey from Saturday Night Live and 30 Rock. Tina Fey.
I'd have to say she feels good just because I think she's so funny and talented. I can't bring myself to say anything bad about her.
Right? Okay. And our last one, Halle Berry.
Oh, come on. When is Halle Berry ever smelled bad? And now, I'm not a fan of her playing Storm, so her performance as Storm stinks, but, smell-wise, it stinks.
The funny thing is, she's done Storm, she's done Catwoman, she's actually done comic book characters in movies, and they're horrible. But you don't stink. She looks like she smells wonderful. Like she smells like lilac and lavender. So,
but her performances stink. So I guess it's horrible.
Right, and that is our 10 questions. Answer fast time. Thank you so much, Alika.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. Thank you for letting me tell my crazy stories too, because the Nerd Watch.
Yeah, everyone was like really inspired and just kind of tripping out on all the history and the culture and everything we talked about. And then on top of that, I got to praise you for just, keeping the comic and collectible culture alive. I think it's something that a lot of the next generation really needs, like these millennials that, they need something they can grab onto, not just a phone, like a comic or like IDJ, so like records or something, that's tangible. And I think that's something that a lot of the next generation is missing. And anyone who can, especially you practically like you're not really making a lot of money doing it. You're doing it for the love and to preserve that culture. So I can say nothing bad about that and just have mad respect for that.
Thank you so much. I truly, truly appreciate that. And also, we didn't even get into the Maui Comic Con because I was just blabbing, but we co-founded the Maui Comic Con, and that is a great event. I just want to plug it because we had to cancel this year, obviously, for obvious reasons. But I just wanted to say that we're a nonprofit. As of 2018, we're a nonprofit. So we count on donations to bring a free to the public convention. This is the only locally created convention in Hawaii. I know there's a lot of conventions in Hawaii, but this is the only one created and owned by locals. And it's the only free to the public convention too. So it's very important, especially to the people of Maui. So if anybody out there is able to donate, you can go to mauicomiccon.com and there's details on how to donate with us. And we appreciate everything that comes in. And we're going to be doing some donation drives coming up pretty soon too.
Very cool. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope to have you again. If you're willing
I would
to
love
come
to
back.
have you guys show. This is good fun, man.
And then we could talk about Maui Comic Con and everything and how that started and what made you. I mean, we have a whole other show with you, man.
I know. We barely talked about comics.
This morning. Yeah, thank you so much again. You do so much for the community. The comic community in Hawaii is better off with you in it. So,
Thank you guys. I really appreciate that, guys. Thank you.
Okay, I'll see you later.
All right. Thank you.
Good night, guys.
All right. Wow, that was quite interesting show, I gotta say.
Wow. Like, honestly, that interview, I knew that he was an educated man. I knew that,
Right.
in the Hawaii community, the comic community, he's a well-respected guy because of what he's gone through and what he's done for the community. I just never knew the background and what he did. Man,
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Yeah, growing up here, like being born here, and then kind of going to Boston, getting the education, and coming back. That's a beautiful thing. Like you do for people. Like a lot of people won't come back because of high prices or whatnot. You can get better paying jobs, and to actually come back and be a part of Hawaii workforce and whatever you do, whether it's what he does or from something as complicated as that to something as simple as driving a bus or working at a Walmart, to just come back and want to live here because you love the islands and you love the cultures. It's a wonderful thing. So definitely big up to that. And and the thing about just trying to preserve the store and just kind of put that industry on to the next generation.
Yeah, dude. Like he's actually been very inspirational. Like him and I, when we first met and we first got, like I said, we had that little bump because of miscommunication. But other than that, it's always been a great thing. When I think about our show and what from Hawaii and doing things from Hawaii, it doesn't necessarily have to stay in Hawaii, but he did. He was one of the guys that I wanted since the beginning. And I didn't know if he was gonna accept it because of the fact that we had that little thing.
Right.
But again,
but he grew up in he went to school in Boston, so thick skin. You know what I mean? Like I think some people take stuff to heart, like you said, but being that he's very educated and that he has that thick skin, that he definitely just let it go. It's just like a simple miscommunicado, no biggie. John said, gotta head out, hitting the road soon. Great podcast. So thanks to John from HW50.
dude, where are you looking at? Facebook or YouTube?
That's YouTube.
Okay. I never see him.
On
Okay.
Facebook, Sarah. I don't know who Sarah YD is. Is that one of your friends, Sarah?
Okay, I'll be right back. I got
Okay.
John as Cody Diecast.
Yeah, Cody Diecast. That's him. Well, I don't know where he went, but we're gonna wrap it up soon. We're at 2 hours in already. I'd like to thank everyone who was in the chat: Monroe, Quan, Nicole, Jennifer, Jax, of course. Who else is in here? If I forget to shout out your name, John from HW50. Let's see, Sarah. Thanks for watching and locking it in. Yeah, great story. Like, I don't know if you can take me serious with this face, but I just like to play around. Oh yeah, Cody, second channel. Yeah, just interesting. A very interesting story about not only like the comic book industry, but like literally like his parents were great grandparents, as you say, was like immigrants, and went through that World War II phase, opened up, kind of planted roots in Maui, and been a staple there ever since, whether it be the steelworks or the pawn shop.
All right, am I back?
Yeah, you're back. You're back.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, the interview was something different. I really thought that this was going to be talking about comics and comics only and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. I didn't know he was one of the Overstreet comic guys. Again, if you don't know Overstreet grading and all that kind of stuff, it's kind of like a Beckett. They used to do trading cards, they used to do comics, they used to do all these kind of things. And I didn't know he was a part of that, man. Like, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, he got mentored into it and all this kind of stuff. It's like I said, it's kind of it's a great interview. Actually, that's why I said he was saying he talked a lot, but I was listening to every word. I was just like, so interesting.
Me too. I'm actually excited to rebook him again because, like he said, we never even got into Maui Comic Con, which is the only comic con that's produced and created by Hawaii people. Now, Amazing Hawaii is from a company in California. The Comic Con Honolulu, again, California company. All these companies are like California, and the only one that really is, local base is Maui Comic Con, and I'd love to get that story. And he agreed. He's like, "Yeah, man, I'll come back on. I'm gonna hold you to it." So, hey,
Definitely.
Mark, I want to see you as a cowboy.
Oh wait, here you go. There you go.
How's
How's that?
Cowboy, well, there's a little lag. I gotta wait. But again, I want to thank everybody in the chat room and everybody. Rubik's Cube, the cat.
You should see the cowboy soon.
Yeah, where the cowboy at?
Married man with cowboy.
Everybody on Facebook. There you go. Look at that chin. Look at that chin. That's a manly chin right there.
Oh boy, I'm having too much fun with this thing.
Even
Kills me every
to
time.
like that.
It's all good, man.
But yeah, so next week, I think we have, who do we have next week, Mark?
I forget already. Oh, Jax? Are we having Jax? Yeah. Is that confirmed? I wasn't sure if that was pencil or pen because of his strict regimen and exercise and whatnot.
He said to give him a couple of weeks to make sure that he can, rearrange schedules and make sure he gets his workout in and all that. But yeah, he's Jax of Hearts, which is normally a part of our chat room and all that kind of stuff. He's going to take time out of his work schedule and his workout schedule to join us and talk about what's going on in his life, how he got involved in the comic industry in Hawaii. He's going to play it down. Like, he's going to be like, well, I'm not really into it, but he is. Everybody knows him. Everybody knows his name. The guys from other realms, Enjoy Comics, Alika, Seki, Maui Comics. Everybody knows Jax of Hearts, or they know him as Jax Madrox. Him and Stacy. So he's going to play it down, but everybody knows him. He's going to talk about that. But also, we're going to talk about his weight loss and how he's keeping it off and how he's continually losing. Dude, I gotta watch out, man, because I made a bet with him that if he gets down to skydiving weight, that I would do the same and I would go skydiving with him. Now, if anybody knows, I'm like Mark. I hate heights, and that's like the ultimate heights. You're jumping out of an airplane. That's like 10 times higher than any building on Hawaii. So, yeah, I better watch out because he's on his way there. Dude, you really like that blue? What is that?
I have no idea. I just found it. I think it just looks cute. I like to blink the eyes, like
blink the eyes, make the eyes blink.
I just think it's cool.
You know how hard it is to have a conversation with you? I'm looking at a blue.
Oh, like, you should see when we do these conference calls with our the video vandals, like the crew we're doing for the streaming on Twitch. Yeah. And like we have the Facebook one, and everybody freaking puts like we're talking, and everyone like puts a different face on. Like one, like the face is like the guy's like jumping out of a plane, and just the face is like that, and see the arms like that. And like, what the fuck? And we're trying to talk, and somebody else has like a freaking robot head, and we're like, what the hell is going on in this chat?
Basically, you guys having a conversation, but nobody's listening because you want to up to each other's faces.
Yeah, we're like, what the heck?
Wasting time.
Yeah, we're just wasting time. We're just chit chatting. But yeah, that should be a perfect podcast as we head into this. Not, I guess we wouldn't say end of summer because I don't even think we had a summer basically because of everything went on. But
I think summer's gonna go till September.
Yeah, so but it'll be good because I'm trying to get my workout back on because it's been out for sure for the last 3-4 months. And I'm finding all the weight I lost, so I'm like, this might be inspirational to me, this coming up podcast. So I'm definitely looking forward to that one. So hopefully he doesn't flake on us.
No, hopefully he doesn't flake us. He's not one to flake on me, so he's one of the guys that I can trust. Just like you, he's one of the guys I can trust with everything. And in fact, when I do go to Hawaii, I literally turn my brain off. And he's like, when people come up to me, oh, you want to go eat after this? Blah, 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 blah. I was like, just before I say, yeah, sure, let's do it. Because he knows I agree to everything. He goes, nope. Like literally, like on a table next to me, he goes, nope, we can't do it. We got this, this, and this. Oh, I'm sorry, we can't do it. And so he's the one that really becomes the functioning brain of the situation. Him and Stacy. Without him and Stacy, I could not survive Hawaii, dude. Like, I would just be hanging out with my nephew all day. Where are you? You're supposed to be at other rooms drawing blah, 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 and doing interviews. Oh, I'm at McDonald's right now, dude. Like, that's how bad it would be if it wasn't for those two. But hopefully Jax has Stacy on if he can. If not, then it's going to be Jax of Hearts or Jax of Madrax next week on the podcast, and I'm going to do a promo for that soon. So
okay, cool.
Dude, what is a thumb? Like with a face on it or something?
I have no idea. I'm just pressing buttons here.
Yeah,
I just put the hopefully we get some other people. Hopefully we get more. I'm still talking. I still want to get Big T's back on the podcast, so I reconnected with him. So hopefully we can get him on in the next coming weeks. So hopefully we'll get T's back on, and then who else was I talking to? A bunch of people, but we'll let you guys know as soon as we confirm that. So that's gonna kind of make it a wrap for us. We're hitting the 2-hour mark right now, so that should be good. What's it? Jack said, not sure how you make it in Vegas. Make what in Vegas? I don't know.
Not sure how you make it in Vegas. Oh, because when I'm in Vegas, I have to do it on my own. I have to book the hotel. I gotta make sure that I talk to the coordinator. I gotta make sure I gotta do this and that and that. But I'm at home, so I have my computer. I have my my list of what I need to do. But when I'm in Hawaii, I just turn it off. I literally just like, okay, Jax is the smarter one, so we're gonna get into this next week, Jax. So, but yeah, I know. Thank you to Don K1. It's a great podcast. You know what, Alika, Seki, thank you so much. I have nothing great things to say about that guy. He did a great interview. He's very articulate. When you grow up next to MIT, I guess you gotta had that skill, right? So, but yeah,
Right.
great interview, dude. Great interview.
Awesome interview, and I'm glad that we had him on the podcast, and we look forward to getting him back on. That's definitely someone we want to get back on and have a lot more to talk about. Definitely for sure.
Very cool.
Hope I didn't make too much of an ass of myself tonight.
No, dude, I was the one being an ass, dude. I was talking over him. And, anyway, this is not. We gotta get off the air. I get it. Dude, you're ridiculous.
All right, I think everyone's getting sick of us, so let's wrap it on up and invite everyone back next week. We'll have Jax on the show, talking about, like you said, his stuff in the comic industry and also his weight loss journey, because it's definitely one that I'm gonna take real soon, because I gotta freaking get into shape, man. I want to live a longer life. I don't know if that's too deep to talk about right now, but I do. So definitely, we'll talk about it next week. So you guys have a great evening. Thanks for locking in Aloha State of Mind podcast every single Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 6 p.m. Hawaii time. You can check us out on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all Aloha State of Mind podcast. You can check out Free and Easy Lifestyle to get your Aloha State of Mind podcast gear. We'll be revamping the site real soon. I know we keep saying that, but for real, we will be. So definitely stick around for that. Most definitely we'll have a lot more interviews coming up in the following weeks and months. So definitely keep locked on our social media, like, subscribe, follow, all those good kind of social media kind things, okay? All right, that's gonna make it a wrap for us for the State of Mind podcast. It's me, Marquise,
And DJ Free.
signing out, reminding you to do something good for somebody you know. Do something better for someone you don't know. Good for the heart, good for the soul, and it spreads the what? Aloha. We'll see you guys next time. Have a great one.
Wherever you are, you're living aloha. Wherever you go, your soul is aloha. Wherever you've been, you're living aloha. A part of yourself is always aloha. Aloha is a state of mind. 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 When you're with family, you feel the aloha. When you're with friends, you feel the aloha. When you're on the beach, the sun's your aloha. And little breeze, a kiss of aloha. Aloha is a state of mind. 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 A state of mind. A state of mind. A state of mind.
Aloha. State of Mind podcast.